Independence Life is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Life has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Life by making a donation at www.independencelife.net. Independence Life is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Life has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Life by making a donation at www.independencelife.net. Independence Life is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Life has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Life by making a donation at www.independencelife.net. Independence Life is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Life has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Life by making a donation at www.independencelife.net. Independence Live is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Live has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Live by making a donation at www.independencelive.net. Independence Live is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Live has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Live by making a donation at www.independencelive.net. Independence Live is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Live has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Live by making a donation at www.independencelive.net. Independence Live is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which mainstream media ignore. Indie Live has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Live by making a donation at www.independencelive.net. Independence Life is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Life has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Life by making a donation at www.independencelife.net. Independence Life is a group of citizen livestream journalists. People like you are us. We livestream important events which the mainstream media ignore. Indie Life has livestreamed over 700 events since November 2013. Most past events are available to view for free from our website. To continue to raise the quality of our coverage, expand outreach, and develop much-needed digital infrastructure, we need money. Please consider supporting the ongoing activity of Indie Life by making a donation at www.independencelife.net.
And it's open to all SNP party members, and for a little fee of a tenner or a fiver a year you can join, and that gives you the right to book into social and political events. But it's also open to SNP party members, and they can bring guests and friends when they come in, and each of us can sign in up to 10 people. And we try and encourage club members and others to bring friends, because this party is all about winning friends. And we've got a lot of work to do in that respect in the next year or two. So that's the end of the commercial. Just finally on that, though, to say that we are open every Friday night. And so you can come along here for a drink on Friday night and share evening with like-minded friends and so forth. And we also host a range of political and social events throughout the year. Another thing you should know a little bit about is that this is also the home of, and on the Saturday of the first day of the conference, they're holding an event, and I must get this right because it's got a very nice, interesting title. It's Saturday the 27th. It's called Capital Conference Capers. It's a glorified ceilidh, old-fashioned ceilidh, with comedians, folk musicians, and it starts at 7:30, goes on till 11:30, and it's in just at the off the grass market at the bottom of Candlemakers Row. You can ask them anything they like, and what they do is basically give us Robinson reported Alec as wrongly. And just as we were leaving that, and I was coming down the stairs, the said reporter was standing at the top of the stairs, and two BBC men came up and briefed him. And this is what they said. They said, he's weak on the economy, keep hammering on about the economy. And that has stuck with me ever since, because for what lies ahead, we have to be strong on the economy. So pay attention this evening, everybody. So thank you. I give you Ivan McKee. Ivan is MSP for Glasgow, Provan. And as a bit of occupational therapy, he's also a Minister for Trade, Innovation and Investment. So over to you, Ivan.
Thank you very much. And you haven't heard what I've got to say yet. Thanks very much for coming along and packing the place out. It's a great venue, very cosy. And I'm just commenting, I've got this, I wasn't sure of the size of the venue, so the font size on this might be a bit big for your eyes, being so close to the screen. Yeah, I'm going to talk for, I don't know, it's probably 20 minutes here about some of the key issues of the economics of an independent Scotland, but very much focused around about what the Growth Commission report has said and the implications of that. And at the end, there'll be plenty of time for Q&A, chat and discussion round about this, or frankly anything else that you want to talk about that is going on at the moment. So I think that the best place to start is to talk about the potential of Scotland's economy. And this is the reason that I got involved in the independence campaign back at the end of 2012 and had a great nearly 2 years going around the country. I did nearly 100 meetings over that, talking about the economic case for independence, all the way from Orkney down to the borders and everything in between. And it was great. And that was all about getting forward the argument that Scotland was had a huge economic potential, but was that potential was being underutilised, and the reason for that was because we weren't able to make our own choices, because we weren't independent. And the reason I kind of came to that conclusion, coming from a business background and not having been involved in the SNP prior to that at all, was largely because of my travels. And I'd lived and worked in a number of around Europe and looked at how well they were doing, and then realised that the inherent advantages that they had, be it their natural resources, the industrial sectors they were in, the education level of the people, and so many others, were not in the same to the same level as Scotland enjoyed. And the question, of course, was, well, why can they do that and Scotland can't? So it was great to see the Growth Commission's work that looked at that very analytically and analysed why that was the situation, and if you've looked at it, there's some good historical reasons why we are where we are, why countries of that size do better, mainly to do with the global interconnected economy and the ability to identify and exploit niches and react to them quickly. And those countries are growing faster than large countries in equivalent geographies. And that kind of shows the opportunity that Scotland is missing out on and that we can take advantage of. And what I've done here is just list some of those advantages, be that round about our energy sector. Oil and gas we all know about, but it's very much the icing on the cake. The shift to renewables has been quite dramatic in Scotland, and genuinely is world leading in terms of what we've managed to do. I was in Norway 2 weeks ago in my as part of my trade minister's job, which is allowing me to see a lot more of the mechanics of how this works in the sector that Scotland really is strong in. And I had a meeting with EY, the consultancy in Norway, and we talked about Equinor, which used to be Statoil, the big Norwegian energy company, and the big investments they've made into the world's first commercial floating offshore wind farm off the coast of Aberdeenshire. And I asked the EY guys, who are experts in this stuff, I said, well, why did Equinor choose to come to Scotland to do this rather than Norway? And he looked at me and said, we were hoping you could tell us the answer to that question. So we are global world leading in renewable energy across a whole range of things. And if you look at our natural resources, water is going to be the new oil in the future. Hey, we're well placed to exploit that. The landscape, we've got the tourism that we build on top of that. Our intellectual resources, we've got more universities in the top 200 per head of population than anywhere else in the world. And again, I see that when I travel and talk to other countries about innovation and what they're doing, and realise that Scottish universities are at the forefront of so many technologies. And 60% of our working age population with a tertiary education, which is right up there, one of the highest in the world. And it goes on and on and on. Scotland leads the UK in terms of inward investment from international investors on R&D because of the inherent strengths we've got and the technologies that are there. Our established sectors, I mean, the City of Edinburgh, financial services, is obviously huge and going back centuries. But the new fintech businesses that are built on the back of that, more than 100 fintech businesses combining excellence in financial services with advanced technology and data systems, again, world leading. Food and drink, we know about the whisky industry, our premium seafood and other parts of the food sector, again, world leading, commanding premium prices wherever we sell them, and in some of those sectors we can't make enough to sell what we could sell. And our long history in engineering that we've built on very successfully, the big investments in the National Manufacturing Institute coming along, the Medicines Manufacturing Innovation Centre, so right across all aspects of manufacturing, really building on that. Life sciences, some of the work that's going on across 5 or 6 of our universities on very specific niche areas of medicines and development in that space, again, truly world leading. Computer games industry in Dundee, we know all about that and how effective that's been in capturing the share of the world market and as an economic driver. Fintech I've spoken about, and then digital technologies, nanotechnology, quantum mechanics, I mean a whole bunch of things that you don't even know what they are, but they're going to be huge in the future, and quite remarkable where we actually are. And my favourite space sector, you may not know that, but Glasgow manufactures more satellites than any other city in Europe. Small cube satellites this size, and we make more of them than anywhere else. We've now got 2 rocket manufacturing businesses in Scotland. Skyrora at Lone Head is just setting up, and I was at the opening of Orbex up in Forres recently. We're going to have the first spaceport in Europe, and I was at the site on Monday up in the north coast of Sutherland. And built on what we do in the City of Edinburgh, around about the School of Informatics at Edinburgh University, the Higgs Centre at the Royal Observatory, and the work that they do in data analytics and data science, we've got the capability to exploit the biggest part of the space sector, which is bringing all the data back down, analysing it and selling it to customers, be that for environmental reasons, tracking forestry, tracking ships, tracking ocean currents, whatever it happens to be. That's what the data is used for, and we're very well placed to exploit that. And that's a sector that, believe me, is going to be huge in the coming decades. So when you look across all of that, Scotland is in a very good place. And on top of that, we've got great reputation worldwide and a huge diaspora, which we're only now beginning to figure out how to exploit the way that some of our neighbours, Ireland, an obvious point in case, have managed to do so over past decades. So all of the building blocks are there. If you wanted to design an independent country for the 21st century, you couldn't do better than take all the building blocks that Scotland already has. And the Growth Commission, what they said was, despite all of this, when you look at all of those inherent advantages, when you look across those 12 other economies that they looked at of Scotland's size, all of whom doing much better than us, from the Scandinavian countries, from Switzerland and Austria and Belgium, from Singapore, New Zealand and so on, they're all doing better than us. And the reason is because we don't have the ability to control the direction of our economy and how we want to invest the wealth that comes from our natural and human resources. And it comes down to the choice of where we want to go as an independent country, or continuing as we are just now. When people talk about Scotland's deficit and so on and so forth, that is a consequence of the mismanagement of Scotland's resources and opportunities by Westminster. Be under no illusions about that. And it's breaking free of that would allow us to move forward. So the Growth Commission looked at this, what they call the next generation economic model, and it was learning from a number of those countries, and it was looking at the 3 Ps, which was how do we increase productivity in Scotland, how do we increase population in Scotland, and how do we increase participation. And that's all about, productivity is about investment in those technologies and getting better at existing technologies. The population story we know back in 1707, a good date to start from. Scottish population was 22% of the population of, as was then, Great Britain. And it's declined and declined and declined. When I was at the turn of the last century, in 1900, it was 12%. When I was a boy growing up, we used to talk about it being 10%. It's now 8%. And that population decline has been dramatic and stark. And reversing that has only started to happen in the last few years. And one of the reasons why Brexit is such a disaster for Scotland is, amongst others, is because of that break it's going to put on our needed population growth. And participation is hugely important. That's about how do you get more people into the workforce, engaged productively in the economy, to help the labour market, to help build communities that badly need it, and to help the individuals and their families take advantage of the economic wealth that we're able to generate. So a big focus on driving down poverty levels, driving down inequality levels, and bringing as many people, be that people who are hard to reach from the labour market, be it people with disabilities that need help to get in the labour market, be it parents who need to come back into the labour market after raising families, and be it people that have been out for a long time and need to be given opportunity to come back in. So all of those form a key part of the work of the Growth Commission, and that inclusion and equality is at the heart of that model. And it's all about demonstrating how Scotland's public sector finances can be put in a much better shape than they are under the current system with Westminster. And there's a couple of points in there that are worth bearing out. One is that the UK is liable for the debt that the UK has at the moment. If you think about that in very logical terms, if you lend somebody money but somebody else owes you money, you can't go to the other person and say, well, go talk to them. That's kind of not how it all works. If you've got to deal with somebody and they owe you money, you need to deal with that person to sort out that particular debt. So the UK has borrowed money from international investors on the money markets, etc., to fund its debt, and it's the UK that pays back and is responsible for that debt. Separate to that is a negotiation at the point of independence as to where the debt and the assets, which are considerable, how they're divided up and how that works going forward, and that's all considered in the Growth Commission's work. And as I said, the inherited deficit tells you a lot more about the mismanagement of Scotland's economy over decades by Westminster than it does about Scotland's inherent advantages as an economy. So it also allows us to make some different decisions. And the Growth Commission looks about how we might make some of those different decisions in terms of what we choose to spend our money on, how we choose to invest our money, and how we choose to move Scotland's economy forward. The oil revenue, as we know, the Growth Commission said the way to deal with that is to do what Norway's done. We're a bit late, but there's still plenty of oil under the North Sea. And I was in Aberdeen last week and talking to companies working in that sector and the work that's going on to new technology, again in deep sea oil drilling, which we are world leading in. And the amount of oil that's there is still significant. So it's taking that asset and investing in the oil fund that allows us to direct that investment into building other sectors of our economy. And it's putting us in control of our finances, and it's setting sensible targets to make sure that debt and deficit don't get out of control. And if you look at other independent countries, what they've achieved, those successful countries, they've got deficits and debts that are at a manageable level. They don't have the great public services they've got by borrowing and printing a load of money. They do it by having strong economies built on strong foundations, things we talked about, getting more people to participate in their labour market, building up the industrial sectors are good at, and of course none of them have got anything like what we've got as a starting point, and they've all managed to deliver that and sustain that over long periods of time, and that is where Scotland should be. So this thing about you're either investing and building your economy but running up a huge debt, or you're not investing, you've got austerity and you're controlling your debt and deficit, those things aren't opposites of each other, as those countries have shown. If you do that properly and intelligently and you've got the resources to do it, which Scotland has, then you should be in a place where you've got manageable debt, manageable deficit and high investment into building a more equal, fairer and a more productive economy. And that is where we need to be focused. It's worth now talking a wee bit about the currency recommendations that are in the Growth Commission, because I know that's an area that people might want to talk about, and it's an area that's going through a bit of debate at the moment. What the recommendation is, and the recommendation that's coming to conference, is that it should be the policy of an SNP government after independence to establish an independent Scottish currency. That should be done through a process that takes us from where we are today, under the pound and under Westminster control, through independence, and then leaving the pound sterling and moving to our own currency when that makes sense. And it lays out a roadmap for how that should be done, and it lays out some tests as to when we should choose to do that. And that's based on very sensible economic principles that allow us to get from where we are today in a series of steps to where we need to be and where we see those other successful independent countries as being at the moment. And what it proposes is after the independence vote, but before Scotland becomes independent, so through that transition period, we set up the central bank. Okay? So we do that at that stage and get that underway. That then allows you, once we're independent, to have a look at deciding what we want to do, complete the preparations after independence, so we're in a position to take those decisions leading to our own currency when it makes sense. And the decisions on when we should do that are built on the 6 tests that are in the Growth Commission. I'll go through the 6 tests in a minute and talk you through each of those as to what they are, why they're there, and why they make sense as the way forward. So the question then is why is this the best way forward? Well, retaining the pound makes sense until it's safe to move to an independent currency. It's an economic argument, but it's also a political argument, because it's the easiest way to bring people with us through that independence journey. And at the end of the day, this isn't about convincing the 40 people that are already convinced about independence. It's about convincing the next 15 or 20% that most of whom voted no the last time, some of whom are yes voters that are kind of on the balance, about securing that slice of the vote in the middle to make sure those people come with us on that journey and understand that independence makes the most sense for Scotland. By some distance, polling shows that people in Scotland prefer to keep sterling after independence. Right? That's the reality of where we are. So the conversation on the doorstep becomes a conversation of, what about the currency? We're going to keep the pound. Are you allowed to do that? Yes. End of conversation. It's not a conversation about what will the exchange rate be, what will the deficit be, will prices be different here to what they are down south, my mortgage is in pounds, my pension's in pounds, what does that mean for me? It doesn't have to worry about any of those questions at that point in time when we go through the independence process, and that is significant. And also, I think if you look at the unfolding shambles that is Brexit, people will want to be secure in the knowledge that we are going through a process that's been thought about, that makes sense, and is going at a speed that can be delivered, and there's answers to all those questions, and that the decisions about currency are going to happen when it's the right time to do it, and most importantly, when the people of Scotland decide it's the right time to do that through their democratically elected Parliament in an independent Scotland. So, why would you not want to move immediately to a new currency? Well, as I've said already, it's not the most popular option, and it's a very difficult sell to make. On day one of independence, we're going to have enough things to worry about, setting up other institutions, taking control of institutions that are there, working on driving forward the other aspects that we need to do in terms of the welfare state, in terms of international relations, in terms of the economic levers we'll take control of at that point in time. There's quite a lot to be getting on with at that stage without having to worry about, yeah, we're going to have to set up a separate currency as well. And the priority at that point should be making sure that we get those other building blocks in place. And it also means we don't have to go through the process of diverting funds in that early stage into reserves to allow us to have foreign exchange reserves, which you would require if you're going to have your own currency and defend it on the international money markets. And we were talking before about the last great Tory mess up on the economy back on Black Wednesday. And that was when the UK government tried to defend the value of the pound to keep it in the ERM back in the early 1990s. And that shows you the mess you can get into in the money markets very, very quickly if you're trying to defend a currency that you don't have the resources to defend, doesn't have the independent country doesn't have the track record to convince people that you've got the sustainability to deliver that, and you spend all your time fighting the money markets and worrying about the value of your currency rather than focus on what you should be doing, and which is, I say, getting the welfare state, putting it in the right shape for the country we want to build, set up the international relations and building on those with other countries around the world, and working on the other economic levers we will have control of to get our industry and the economy in the right shape. So for all of those reasons, rushing into that on day one is not something you'd want to do. So then it becomes the question of providing that stability for a period of time until we move to the new currency. As I said, it means we'll be able to answer those questions on the doorstep about mortgages, about savings, about pensions, about people getting worried about all of those things. You may know the issues we had with pensions last time, this, if we're talking about a currency solution, on top of that, it gets even more complicated to work through that reassurance. And about prices as well. We don't want to be in a situation on day one where we've got uncertainty about what the price of things are going to be north and south of the border. One of the interesting things about this is that currency is focused on so much as part of this independence debate. Now, the reason for that, of course, is that the decision was made in the No campaign back during the 2014 campaign to focus on that as a political lever to attack the independence campaign. Because whatever currency option you choose, there's an argument against it. There's an argument for it, but there's an argument against it. And we've seen it already when the SNP conference agenda to talk about an independent currency was put forward. Immediately on the FMQ straight after that, Jackson Carla was on his feet having a go at how ridiculous it was that Scotland would want to have its own currency, right? So you think about that, they spent the whole first referendum campaign talking about why we couldn't keep the pound and why it was a daft idea to think we could keep the pound, and now they're getting lined up to talk about why it would be a daft idea to have an independent currency, because the reality is that's all political. They will have a go at you whatever currency solution you put forward, so there's no getting away from that. You just need to make the right decision, face up to it and deal with those arguments on the doorstep, and don't think that because the last time the solution was a difficult one, making a different choice is going to make it any easier to have those arguments. And if you look at other examples, I like talking about Scandinavia. It's an area I've spent a bit of time living and working in. And you look at Finland that doesn't have its own currency. You look at Sweden that's in the EU and does have its own currency. You look at Denmark that's in the EU, does have its own currency but ties it to the euro. And you look at Norway that's outside the EU, it has its own currency. And then you look at Ireland in the station there, and you think, do you know what? They're all doing pretty well, because the reality is if the fundamentals of your economy are strong, it doesn't matter whether you've got to count your bank balance in any currency you like, it's still a successful economy that's generating wealth. And that's what's important. It's important to focus on building the economy and not get too fixated on what the currency is. And countries go through a process of changing their currency. I mean, the Baltic states have been through, they were in the Soviet Union, then they had their own currency, and now they're all in the euro. Countries go through that process all the time. And even sterling, people say we've had sterling for hundreds of years. We've had sterling tied to the dollar, we've had sterling free floating, we've had sterling in the ERM tied to the European exchange rate mechanism, we've had sterling on the gold standard and off the gold standard. Sterling's been through many different permutations over a long period of time in terms of how that currency was managed, whether it would lock or whether it makes some other decision and peg their currency to some other currency, has to go through that process. And it's a lot about the advantage of what your economic cycles are at that point in time, which economies you're trading most with, and what advantage you can secure between not having to worry about the international money markets on the one hand attacking your currency, how much foreign exchange reserves you've got. Denmark's got 60 billion euros of foreign exchange reserves to protect the krona, and they've got the European Central Bank sat behind them because it's important for the ECB that Denmark maintains that peg as well. So you need to be in a position to be able to do that. How important interest rates are versus how important the exchange rate is, and whether you want that to be a strong currency or a weak currency to help your exports. There's a lot of different decisions in that space, and there's no right answer. The answer will depend on where you are at any point in the development of the economy. So what the Growth Commission said is that should be done safely, securely, and in the best interest, most importantly, of the people and the economy of Scotland. The 6 tests, 3 of them are numerical tests, if you like. It's about having fiscal sustainability. It's about having a central bank, which will have built up by then over a number of years, and it'll have some stability and credibility. It's about, and the fiscal sustainability, about the debt and the deficit levels, the central bank credibility and stability, and the foreign exchange and financial reserves in place to be able to support the launching of the independent currency. So you want to have those building blocks in place before you go jumping in with 2 feet and not having a secure place to land. So those 3 are kind of numerical. The next 2 are around about economic cycles, trade cycles, investment patterns. And that's basically saying that depending on where you're doing most of your trade, imports and exports, that kind of it makes more sense, everything else being equal, to be more closely aligned to the countries you're doing most trade with. So you're in a position where, because at the start a lot of what we'll be doing is trade still with the UK until we increase our exports. Beyond that, we're very much tied to the UK's economic cycles. Over time, as we become independent, as we develop our own economy, as we're trading more widely internationally, as we're building up those sectors we've talked about, we'll be in a position where we've got more economic strength, financial strength, stability, but also not perhaps moving in the same economic cycle as the UK is. So those 2 tests are said about the economic cycles. And the last one, probably the most important one, and that's when it suits. We'll move to an independent currency when it suits the people and the businesses of Scotland. And the best people to make that decision are the people of Scotland, who will sit down and look at independence after a number of years, look at the success we're making of it, have time to absorb those arguments, understand the implications of it, and then make a decision through their parliament as to how we should go forward from there. So the 6 tests, I think, are pretty solid. You can argue about maybe that one shouldn't be there, maybe it should be a different one. You can argue about whether the number should be one place or another place. But just to say we should go to an independent currency without checking anything, I think is perhaps not the best jump into the dark to make. So the way that would work through is the independent central bank would report annually back to the Parliament on progress towards meeting the criteria, and then an SNP government would look at that and make a decision based on those the state of the economy, everything else, and where the public were moving on this, to take a decision as to when was the best time to make the move towards an independent currency. So if you look at all this in the wider context, it's all obviously about winning independence, which is what everything we're doing should be focused on. This approach, very structured, it's very level-headed, it's very easy to argue, but it's got a lot of economic depth behind it in terms of the validity of those arguments. So it's an approach that I believe, and I've not heard anybody that's convincingly argued anything different, is going to help convince more people to vote for independence in the first instance. But it also shows how we can run public sector finances without austerity. And if you look at the position in terms terms of what we call austerity. Over the last 10 years, the UK government in real terms has cut public spending by 9%. Right? The 10 years roadmap that's laid out in the Growth Commission said would increase public sector spending in real terms by 5%. So minus 9% is austerity, plus 5%, which is what the Growth Commission is talking about in this scenario, whilst also having prudent control over debt and deficit, is plus 5%, is the opposite of austerity. So anybody that tries to tell you those two things are the same hasn't been looking at the numbers. Importantly, taking this approach to the currency puts the decision in the hands of the people of Scotland, and we're making that decision from an informed basis at the point in time where it makes sense. We're not trying to predict now what we should be doing a number of years in the future, not knowing what that environment's going to necessarily look like, and then tying the hands of where we're going next. And I think it provides that reassurance and certainty that's going to help us to get there. So that's it in terms of what I wanted to say. There's obviously quite a bit there in terms of the Growth Commission's work on the wider economic agenda, on public sector finances, on the 3 Ps, participation, population and productivity, and also the bit on the currency. And if you've read the Growth Commission or read the summary or even read the 50 recommendations, you know, it's what it says, there's 50 different recommendations in there. Number 44 is the one on the currency, but the other 49 recommendations are really solid and very, very well worth reading as well, and understanding what they've got to say about how we move forward in the economy of an independent Scotland. I'll stop there and allow people to ask questions.
As you probably know, this has been live streamed and will go out on YouTube, so best behaviour. And we have to pass this around. That means you, Alison. Okay. So you have to pass this around when you ask a question. So, shall we start? We'll start with Barry, and we'll move on.
Okay, I've really got quite a few, but just...
I'll pick one.
I'll pick two.
Okay, I'll let you off.
The first is the question of the solidarity payment. Yeah. There's a reason that the UK is called Perfidious Albion. And I used to be of the belief that this was the way to go. I'm now of the belief that we should take the EU line and say nothing's agreed till everything's agreed, and the payment of our share of national debt is dependent upon good faith, but not as a starting point, but it's dependent upon good faith being shown in economic matters by the UK, because we know how treacherous they can be. The second one on the currency, and I'm basing this on probably not great economic knowledge, but a bit. You can basically tag your currency to any internationally traded currency. That's how Thailand tags the dollar, for instance, my wife's Thai. Now, surely what we should be doing is being able to launch our own currency in terms of it's called a Scottish pound or whatever, but then tagging not necessarily to sterling, but to whatever currency will best suit our economic needs. We could equally tag to the dollar, the euro, the yen, or the Chinese currency. That gives us much more flexibility in deciding to tag to what suits us and not this slavish that. And you just do that obviously by buying on the international market. You can buy the currency and you can then tag to it because you're holding reserves of it.
Okay. And tackling the last one first, I think that you answered your own question by the last thing you said, which was you just buy it on the international money markets, right? So the way Denmark does it, the way Hong Kong does it to tag to the dollar, Thailand and other countries that do it, is they do exactly that. They intervene on a hour-by-hour basis on the money markets to keep their currency, and it's not exactly tagged. If you look at, if you key in DKK versus EUR, you'll see it kind of goes like that, and if you blow the scale up, it's moving within fractions of a percent, minute by minute, right? And the reason it's doing that is because every time it goes like that by a fraction of a percent, they jump in and buy, and every time it goes like that, they jump in and sell. So they're constantly managing that. Now, to be able to do that, you need to have a war chest yo big to be able to throw billions in and out of the money markets to be able to buy and sell. That's the problem, and if you're on day one of independence, you don't have that luxury. So the reality is you're going to be in the point where the money markets will decide where your currency is going to be, and you're going to be fairly powerless to do anything about that, unfortunately. The you then got the option to do that over time as you build up the reserves, and then you're in a place to do that. And one of the things in our advantage, and I was looking at the data earlier today for another reason, is that Scotland's trade balance, the difference between what we export and what we import, we export quite a lot more than what we import. The rest of the UK, it's the opposite, right? They've been exporting a lot less than they're importing for quite a number of decades now. So in terms of building up foreign currency reserves over time, you're in a better place to be able to do that. So that's why over time you do that to get yourself in a position where you can do exactly that, which you can't do on day one. Because on day one, all you've got is your own currency. All you can do is print more of your own currency. But printing more of your own currency doesn't allow you to intervene in the markets because you can't buy anything else with it. And the more of it you print, the less it's worth, which means that your value of your currency is going down. In terms of the solidarity payment, yeah, I think that it's probably worth taking a wee step back and thinking there's nothing in there that says we're saying that everything nothing's agreed until everything's agreed, right? What we are doing is laying down some kind of markers as to where the negotiation space may take place. And then you go into the room and start having conversations. But the fact that you put something out there as a mark of goodwill says, assuming we get everything else sorted out, this is the kind of direction we're looking at, and this is the kind of numbers we're kind of in this kind of ballpark, as an opening gambit, kind of shows good faith and gets you in a good place. You then have got the option to say, well, hold on a minute, if you're not playing ball here, then we are kind of pulling this back because we'd expected this for that. So that negotiation is clearly complex and will happen through that transition period. And where it ends up, obviously may not be where we start, but as a way of mapping out what a sensible solution might be, I think it's not a bad place to start, because it allows us then to take that number that's in there for the solidarity payment, factor that into these calculations and say, even if we do that, these numbers still come out and show us that we're in a good place and able to hit our targets on debt and deficit. And you know what? If the solidarity payment is less than that, then we're quids in, right? Because we've allowed for this, but it's actually going to be that. So putting it out there, I think, is a sensible early negotiation gambit, if you like, and then where it ends up, we'll see. Be reassured that the things that have happened over the last 2.5 to 3 years have been watched very closely in terms of how to negotiate and how not to negotiate.
Hi, Doug Campbell.
I'll pass it along the front and then back.
Your last comment probably relates to what I'm thinking about. And please excuse me, I've been at a party, 50th birthday, I've had some champagne.
Good for you.
Dashed to come here. One of the problems I see is that we're too nice. If you remember in the past, some of you who are old as I am, Scotland's Oil, people didn't like that idea it was Scotland's Oil. They were more of a community here, we want to share, we want to give, etc. And I think we're possibly being a bit too nice now, and it might be a risk factor. You had Finland, you had Ireland had taken the euro. Now they're in the euro because they're with an organisation that supports them. On day one of an independence vote and all the days leading up to independence vote, we will have a country that really doesn't support us, will not wish us well, and will, as you said, Roy, but even the BBC, the BBC in that comment, will be trying to undermine a new Scotland. And with the concept of a second vote, as we might well have in the EU, that will be a game plan for them. And when it comes to things like the solidarity payment, I was cheered by someone saying, wait a minute, they've robbed us of the oil, they've wasted it, they've robbed Scotland for years and generations. Should we not begin to turn it round a little bit? I agree with you, we can't go immediately to our own currency, but let's, for goodness sake, have a bit of spine and bite and say, we need to take control of Scotland as soon as we possibly can after the independence vote, because rest assured these guys will be after us.
I mean, it's a complicated landscape, and it's about intelligently navigating your way through that, right? And standing up and shouting at them and storming out the room and banging the door doesn't actually move you forward. It's about figuring out where the assets and liabilities are, what our negotiating levers are, what we need to work to mitigate and figuring out the best way to work through that and picking your battles one at a time and making sure you win them. And the first battle we need to win is to win the independence vote. And then we need to put the foundations in place that I talked about in the Growth Commission, and then we address the currency question. I think that's the stages we need to go through, and trying to fight all those battles on day one doesn't make our hand any stronger. If anything, it makes it harder. And I think we've got to make sure we understand that and figure out, as I say, it's all about winning each of those battles as they arise.
Ivan, I've got a couple of questions. I want to know a little bit more about the development of ports in Scotland and also the development of our own, hopefully much fairer form of taxation.
Okay. Right. In terms of ports, this is something as part of our export plan that we're working on at the moment in the Scottish Government. Understand how trade flows in and out the country and what capacity and potential upside capacity there is. It's fair to say that at the moment the majority of freight leaves by truck and it goes down south to ports down south, either Dover or depending on where it's going, Liverpool or wherever else. It's also true to say that depending on the commodity, high value commodities are often air freighted, a lot of that from Heathrow, but a bit of it from Scotland as well. It's true to say that the ports in Scotland at the moment do have capacity, so that is there. It's a question of how we best leverage that and exploit that, and that's obviously been looked at in the context of Brexit as well. But it's also true to say that companies will take the cheapest route to market, and at the moment the cheapest way to get to market is to drive it on a truck down to Dover, across the channel and into Europe, rather than putting on a boat, which is more expensive mile per mile than sending it by road. So that's the reality of where we are. So our job as government isn't to tell companies you have to send it from a Scottish port, right? That's not what we're about. What we're about is making sure that the capacity is there, and if there's a demand for it, we're able to support it. And if there's an emergency situation like a Brexit scenario, we're able to support it as well. And that work is happening both in the Brexit context and on the longer term, working with ports to understand what the capacity is and what we need to do it, working with airports to understand how can we get more of Scottish exports that are air freighted coming direct from Scottish airports rather than having to go through Heathrow. So that work's happening. In terms of the taxation, we've made the, you got to remember, we only control a limited amount of the levers on tax, and even our income tax, there's a lot of things we don't control. We don't control the definition of income, for example, which sounds a bit dry, but it's quite important in terms of what goes into that box you tax and what doesn't. We don't control tax on savings and dividends. We only control it on income. We don't control national insurance. We don't control the zero rated band. There's a number of things we don't control even. So I think that the steps that we've taken, the first kind of steps we've taken to move in that direction are welcome. And again, of course, what we did this year was another step in that direction by freezing the higher rate bands. So that's all good. You're always doing a number of things there. You're moving the tax system to where you want it to be. You are demonstrating to people that you're wisely using the money you're raising, be it to create the best health system in the UK or keeping police officers in the street, unlike other parts of the UK, or what we're doing with the limited welfare powers we've got, etc., etc. So you've got to go through that process of demonstrating to people you're spending it wisely, and also understanding where the public are in terms of, because you can only, you've got to get that right balance between.
Pass it back. Penny, you're next.
It's okay, you fix it up.
It's on.
That's on now?
Yes.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was the how companies are investing from abroad and then repatriating 100% of profits made in Scotland through and then avoiding corporate tax. There seems to be that it's so tax advantageous to own money abroad and to repatriate profits abroad without paying corporation tax, that it's destroying so much of our economy, our income, our total tax take.
Well, the first point is that corporation tax is still reserved. So the corporation tax doesn't get paid to the Scottish Government, it gets paid to
Yeah, I know
Westminster
that.
at a UK level. The second point to note is that after you're an independent country, by and large, with some minor exceptions, but by and large, if somebody's wanting to do business here, they're typically going to have to set up a legal entity, a company here, registered in Scotland, and paying corporation tax in Scotland. In terms of how companies manage that, there's clearly some high-profile examples of companies that play the game internationally, and international cooperation is clearly part of that, because you need to be able to agree with across several countries that you're going to deal with this company or that company in a way that prevents them from jumping from A to B to do the games that they're doing. But say that requires international cooperation as well. And it's, so in terms of that side of it, there'll be more things we'll be able to do when we're independent to keep more of that profit in Scotland. And there are things that you can do cooperating with other countries to manage how companies do that. But you also got to take a step back and understand that in the global interconnected economy, foreign direct investment is by and large a good thing, because it's people taking their money, bringing it here and investing it here, either hiring people here and paying their wages, or giving orders to local companies to supply them with the bits they need to make whatever they're making, etc., etc. And in terms of foreign direct investment, Scotland's done well. I talked about the R&D spend, the R&D investment in Scotland. And if you look at over the last 6 years, Scotland's been the best performing part of the UK outside of London in terms of attracting foreign businesses with money to invest to come and invest that money in Scotland rather than taking it elsewhere. And that landscape is very competitive. I mean, everybody's out to try and get that money, be it Ireland, be it other bits of the UK, be it other European countries, be it whatever, and we've done pretty well. And that's testament to the fact that we've got these inherent strengths in our economy that foreign investors can see a return in the long term from being involved in helping build up Scottish businesses.
Pass it along, please.
You need it for the live stream. That's what's picking it up.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
That's why I've got one on as well, even though I'm not connected to anything here.
I have two comments. One has to do with money and
Yeah.
currency. And what the Growth Commission sets up is a perfect regime of constant and chronic capital flight. Why would I have a bank account in Scotland, which is talking about having its own currency, when I can have a bank account in Manchester, in pounds, constantly sending it down there? And the fact is we have no more banks that are Scottish banks. That's one point. And it worries me that the Commission's concern is peace. Everything should be peace. It should be reasonable and sensible. And I sincerely doubt that that will be the situation. I'm skeptical in the extreme. And it's the idea that the politics of money are what you need to be concerned about, which links to my second point. To say that the foreign direct investment benefits depends on the rules. And my second question or criticism of this Commission report is there's no attention to the rules. And I'll give an example. Livingston's Motorola plant was shut down because Margaret Thatcher said that was okay, but France did not. Motorola continued to produce in France because it was expensive to leave France. So it's within the capacity of a government to restrain multinationals. But this Commission report shows that they don't understand how. So because I have no confidence in their ability to constrain multinationals, I'm very critical of what they're saying about currency.
Okay, I mean, so you're saying you don't like one thing because you don't like a different thing?
I don't like either
right,
of them. But
okay. So your currency position is based on the fact you don't like the investment side
no,
of it.
The
if you talk
the currency position is based on the fact that I'm a monetary economist.
Right,
So I
which
can
means
pull
what?
out that.
Which means what?
It means that's what I did for a
Right.
living.
Right, but what does that mean?
It means that you have to understand what money is
Mm-hmm.
to talk about what you need in a currency. So for example, currency savings are generational. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people, older people who have savings. They're worried about losing it if you introduce a new currency. Sell them a bond at 3%.
In which
Then you
currency?
have foreign reserves.
In which currency?
Well, you can sell it to them in the currencies that you can sell it to them in pounds.
Sterling.
Buy the pounds and sell it to them.
So you're still working in sterling then?
I think there's a difference between the currencies you transact in, which 80% of transactions are digital. The ledger doesn't care what the denomination is. And then there are issues around how do you mobilize. Here's another example. One of the key issues in Poland at the time of the dissolution of the Soviet Union was how to get all the dollars from underneath all the mattresses. It's true. People were sending, people in Chicago, huge Polish population sending money. They would go around and say, you can trust us. And people would say, that's what the communists said. And they really, really had to work. They had foreign exchange in their country in bills, and they couldn't get it.
Yeah.
I think you need an inventory of the wealth of the people of Scotland.
Okay, so pick some of that up one at a time. I mean, in the last point, the reason you had that, you're basically arguing against yourself, because you're saying the reason that they had that was because they had one currency that people wanted to use, and they were trying to have their own currency that people didn't want to use, which is exactly the position you would risk happening if we had an independent currency that nobody wanted to use for whatever reason, and they were all still using sterling. And that's the danger of that situation, what you would get into. If you were in a situation you're saying, well, we'll just lend to them and we'll have the bonds denominated in sterling, then effectively what you're saying is that we're borrowing sterling and then rather than people, so the people that were in Scotland, if you let me finish, you're not connected.
Scotland would have 20% of its revenue in US dollars because of oil. Oil is denominated in dollars.
Yeah.
So you've already got a huge chunk of foreign exchange reserves.
Yeah.
And the Commission doesn't talk about that as real important money.
It's not as much as 20%, but and it varies year on year. And the whole point of that is you put that into the oil fund, and to rely on that as being a fundamental of your economy is not.
That isn't about the money.
Well, you're talking about what currency it comes in. The currencies come in all kinds of currencies, but the biggest part of the currency coming into Scotland is actually pound sterling, of course, which is 2/3 of our foreign, if you count Scotland as an independent country, of our exports are going to the rest of the UK. Over time, you reduce that, as Ireland did. It took them 40 years to go from. If you want me to pick up the points one at a time. If you want me to talk for the points one at a time, right? So talking about exports to the rest of the UK, right? The whisky that goes international, which is the vast majority of it, isn't part of that 60-odd%. Now, Ireland did a job of getting their exports to the UK down from 60-odd% in the 70s down to less than 20% now, and that's the direction you need to go in. But you start off from a position where most of your trade is still with the rest of the UK, and it's in sterling. And if you're talking about saying that we're going to have our own currency, but we're going to borrow from people in Scotland, but we're going to borrow from them in sterling, then what's the point? You're effectively using sterling to generate the investment, to invest in the Scottish economy, rather than doing it in Scottish pounds. And if you're talking about investment, you're talking about FDI, which by and large is a good thing, right? Because you're bringing in money from abroad to invest in Scotland. And at the same time, you're talking about the danger of capital flight, which is the opposite of FDI, which is people taking money out of Scotland and putting it in a bank account somewhere else. You can't say that both of those are bad things when they're the opposite of each other. So there's a lot of different things there that don't stack up. Now, in terms of the modern monetary theory stuff, I mean, from what I've seen of that, basically it rests on the idea, which isn't a modern idea at all, it's a very old idea, which is that if you want to get yourself out of economic trouble, the answer is to have your own currency and then print loads of money, because then you can just buy your way out of the problem. And there's this fallacy that by printing loads of your own money, you can invest in stuff, you can pay more people to whatever. The problem with that, the fundamental problem with that, of course, is it completely trashes your exchange rate and your currency becomes worth less and less. Well, that's why I asked you what you were talking about in terms of modern monetary
theory. Right, that's what you said.
Right, sorry, I thought that's what I heard you say.
No, I wasn't saying that at all. I was thinking of Hong Kong and what Hong Kong did.
Which was what? Hong Kong's currency is tied to the dollar.
No, Hong Kong, before the big changes, had 7 different currencies. It had a currency basket, right? And all of the currencies it earned formed part of its reserves. It worked very well.
Right. How long did it take to build up those reserves before?
Well, I mean, you know, we got to start somewhere.
Exactly, and the whole point is we start from where we are, and then when it makes sense and we do have those reserves, we're in a position to make a decision about going to an independent currency. Okay, so the probably best to move on.
Can we move on, Penny? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just Craig Murray, I remember his television programme talking about the Scotland's stolen seas. And it's a much talked about subject, obviously painful for many of us. But how long do you think it would take us to, A, recapture these seas after independence? And he did touch on the fact that there was also some independent judiciary or something, international judiciary, that would actually manage to sort of argue our case, as it were, internationally. I can't remember the name of that, but can you see a way in which we can get these things back fairly quickly and
yeah, I mean, what you're referring to
quickly,
is
etc.?
There's a line in the sea going out from the English-Scottish border going into the North Sea, and depending on how you read UNCLOS, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the line can go in a different way. And under Tony Blair, they kind of drew the line in a way. That's right. The process by which you would go and get that argued internationally, I have to admit, I'm not an expert on. Right, okay. It would certainly be something that would be on the agenda. I've no doubt it would be something that would be part of the negotiations, but where it would end up and whether it go through that route or whether it go through a route to an international court, I have to admit,
I mean, they actually redrew the line the day before the independence, the Scottish Parliament came into being. The day before, they literally redrew the line, which showed, well, great wiliness on their part, to say the least. You know, so, yeah. It's, thank you.
Well, maybe I could ask a question.
Please.
I was at a meeting here with Robin McAlpine, and of course he, as we know, takes a different view.
And Robin and I are great friends and colleagues, but on this we don't always agree. And that's good.
One of the things he's saying, and it's coming out in the politics of this, that this commits the country, or condemns it, as he would put it, to 10 years of austerity. And this will not help the poorer people in our country. So how do you answer that?
Well, I think there's a number of things you need to look at there. The first is that the Growth Commission, as I've said, is talking about 0.5% real terms increase in public spending over a 10-year period. So over 10 years, you're increasing public spending and investment by 5% above inflation. If you compare that to what's happened in the last 10 years, it's been going in the other direction, and it's going in the other direction by 9%. So that's a 14% difference between what you'd call austerity that we've experienced under Westminster in the last 10 years and the economic case that's in the Growth Commission over the next 10 years under independence. So it's, to compare the two and say they're the same is completely to ignore the numbers that are there. Clearly, you can only do what you want to do. You can't wish poverty away and inequality away. You need to be able to deliver that through sound economic principles that are going to take the sectors we're strong at, exploit that, build the economy till you end up in the position of the other countries that we started talking about. So that doesn't happen overnight. You start to move in that direction and you move as fast as you can, and we know where we're going to get to, and the Growth Commission lays out how that process would work. Now, the idea that all of those problems go away because you have your own currency is not something that I think stands up to scrutiny. If the argument is that we've got our own currency, therefore we can print more money and give people more money, which is kind of what it relies on when you dig into it, it's a bit of, frankly, self-evident nonsense, because I say, if it was that easy just to print more money and that made everybody richer, then why doesn't everybody do it? And the countries that do it don't do it for very long, because their economies kind of get trashed after a bit. So the economic strength is built on being able to do things that people want to buy internationally, selling stuff, getting your exports up, having the best technology, the best manufacturing, the best services, the best education system, so you've got something you can sell and support your economy going forward. If it was easy just to say on day one to run your own currency, press the go button.
He argues he might not be able to develop a healthier, wealthier, happier Scotland because of the influence of the Bank of England.
Well, all the Bank of England,
big country to the south.
Yeah, all the Bank of England's going to control is the interest rate. Right now, okay, so you can move interest rates by a quarter of a point here or there. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference. What's more important is being able to do the things we've talked about, which is getting control of the welfare system, getting control of international relations, controlling the other levers in terms of economic development, building up the industrial base, tackling the population issue, which will have control of immigration, tackling the participation issue through what we can do through the welfare system to bring more people that are further away from the labour market into work, and tackling the productivity issue by directing investment where we want to direct it. Those are the things we focus on, because those are the things that make a difference. To not be able to do that because you're too busy worrying about waking up in the morning and finding the markets in Asia have trashed your currency and you need to throw billions at it to get back to where you want to be, is not the battle you want to be fighting on day one of independence. So I think that argument, to my mind, it doesn't stand up. I mean, other people have got a different view, but that would be my answer to that.
Well, and then the gentleman at the back.
Different area. My background is as a midwife, and I'm
Okay.
concerned about the reproduction of our own Scottish species. And there's an economic sense to that as well. We're trying to get the balance sorted by importing young people who are fertile, but they come for their own reasons, and they pick up the how things are here and don't necessarily want to produce, so they will become old and dependent in their own time. We do have to reproduce people. It's very important. A factory can't keep running without reproducing its product. The people can't manage if we don't reproduce ourselves. So how are you economists going to entice people to take time to have children? It's quite important.
I've done my bit, Alice. More sex, please.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this isn't an issue for Scotland only, right? This is an issue for every country in Europe. There are worse countries than us, but Italy is worse. Some Eastern European countries are worse. We're probably kind of in the middle. And Scotland's population issue isn't a fertility issue or a birth rate issue, right? The issue is emigration and less immigration. Those are the issues that make a difference between why Scotland's population is what it is and compared to England's population, compared to population in other countries. It's the fact that so many people have left Scotland and continue to leave. So the job is to convince people who not to leave because there's opportunities here, to convince people who have left that it's worth coming back, and to convince people that are elsewhere that it's worth coming and living and working and studying here. Those are the issues that will tackle population. As I say, that fertility rate is pretty much the same across Europe, and in the countries that, if you take Poland for example, it's actually, if I'm correct, lower fertility rates than it is here. So the countries the people that are coming here aren't coming in and learning our ways of not reproducing. That pattern is evident right across all of those European countries already. As I say, in many of them to a greater extent than it is here. So I think that family-friendly policies, absolutely, there's a place for them, without a doubt. But the challenge on population is effectively a challenge on stopping people emigrating and convincing more people to come back or come here in the first place. Absolutely, yes. All of that is part of the same picture. Yeah. No, I get the point. And as I say, family-friendly policies are very important and deserve to be.
Right. I have a question. I would like to know how an actual Brexit will affect the case for an independent Scotland, assuming Brexit takes place.
Yeah, okay. Big assumption. Yeah, and I think we don't know where we're going to end up with Brexit. It's hugely unpredictable, and every time you look at it, we're going potentially in another direction. I think the range of options is actually opening up wider rather than narrowing down, as you would expect at this stage in the process. So given that amount of uncertainty, it's difficult to pin down exactly where it's going to go. in terms of the implications of that for Scotland, I think it's very clear that people are looking at the Westminster system and the parties that are there and recognising very clearly that they are not up to the job. The system is inherently unable to deliver, and asking the big question about, is that something we want to be part of? There are also many people, and a lot of them in Edinburgh, because of the way it voted no and then voted very overwhelmingly for Remain. There's a whole range of people who are who were no voters in 2014 but are very strongly in favour of membership of the European Union, who will look at that and look at an independent Scotland being part of Europe as being something that they want to consider independence in the context of that they might not have looked at it in that view 5 years ago. So I think those are things that kind of count in our favour, if you like. There is an issue, and be frank about it, when times are unsettled, people are less likely to opt for change. And if you're in a difficult place, not knowing what's happening, perhaps a Brexit shock coming along to the economy, and looking at the fact that change can be difficult depending on what it is and who's driving the change, that is something that we need to address. And that, I'm sure, will be part of the discussions going forward in terms of the next independence referendum campaign. But it's something we need to deal with head on and explain why the future for Scotland allows us to be able to make those decisions ourselves rather than being part of this larger entity that's got a different direction and philosophy on our relationships with Europe than we have, and that because that situation didn't work out to being successful, doesn't mean that the independence offering, which is a very different offering, shouldn't be successful. So I think we need to make those arguments. Depending also what happens in terms of where the dust finally settles, clearly you've also got issues then round about whether the rest of the UK is in or out of the customs union, in or out of the single market, and that affects the relationship with Scotland. But one thing you can say, well, a few things you can say with certainty, Scotland is the rest of the UK's #2 export partner after the US, so we are hugely important to the economy of the rest of the UK. And if they were looking at that, if we were independent and they were looking at their list of target countries to go do really good trade deals with, we'd be top of the list. That goes without saying. And the second thing is they're also extremely keen to get a very good trade deal with the EU. No matter how hard Brexit is, they'll want to have that. And an independent Scotland as part of the EU is going to be getting the same trade deal as everybody else in the EU. So those things count in our favour, very much so. But as I say, depending on where it ends up, there's going to be issues there that need to be addressed. All of them can be addressed, but the answer to each of them is different, depending on where we're starting from.
Hello. So my position is quite precarious because I work in London in private equity. My boss is actually one of the biggest Tory backers, donators. I'm just secretly in there just trying to see how he makes so much money and get out. But actually my question is kind of more indirect in relation to what you mentioned about young people and the aging population. I think it's a really big issue, and I'm half Korean, half Scottish. Even though I sound English, I'm really sorry about that. So one of the really good programs I've seen from small countries, a lovely program from the Netherlands and Korea actually. They noticed that loneliness in the aging population is a really big problem, and students who can't afford housing is a massive problem. So they decided to combine the two together. They put all people. They had I think it's a massive success still. They had all people willing to take in students, and this is a government program whereby these young students can live with them, live with the elderly population, and they learn so much from each other. And the loneliness, is such a huge issue. I think it's not looked at enough, and it's been doing wonders. And a thing that they found out is that when these people pass away, instead of the house just kind of going into ether and not being just being left to ruin, they go, you've been wonderful to me, and I want to give you something back. And it's actually sorted out a lot of the housing problems and helped a lot of people at the same time.
That is a good idea.
It's something that a small country can do.
Yes.
And as a small country can take control of, Netherlands and Korea. So I think Scotland maybe is the right kind of size to be able to say, let's implement a policy like this. We have that scheme here. Oh, really? Okay, sorry about that. Whoops. Okay, whoops.
But it does highlight the point that, yes, you're right. Small countries, and we've seen it, can identify those problems, bring everybody together, figure out an answer that can be a bit imaginative and go and implement it much faster than large countries can, because they become so big that the government layer is very disconnected from what's happening on the ground.
Any further questions?
A couple of cautionary notes on what we're saying. It might be obvious to everyone here that the Westminster system's an utter shambles and we could hardly fail but to do better. But there's murmurs, particularly within the unionist press, of saying if it's this hard to get out of a union that you were in for 40 years, imagine how hard it'll be to get out of a union that you're in for 300. And that's what the way they're going to pitch this.
Yeah, no, I've no doubt, and that's what I'm saying. We need to be ready to be able to deal with that, and there are good ways to argue against that.
And the other one about the Growth Commission, it's got a lot of good things in it, but it does seem to accept the capitalist model. And while that's free market capitalism, maybe that's not so bad. But what we're looking at now is a combination of vulture capitalism and disaster capitalism spreading around the world. You can see what Trump's doing. You don't need to look very far. Now, surely what we have to do, given that we don't have a magic wand to start on day one, is to protect ourselves a bit from this. And really that means looking more at, I don't say we don't want inward investment, but we should surely be looking at SMEs, at the Landesbank system and such like, and developing as quickly as possible the indigenous. Small businesses employ more, they keep more money in the economy, they're generally better for small countries.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's that combination. I think the Scottish National Investment Bank that we're setting up this year with 3 billion of Scottish Government money going into it and then leveraging up other money with a focus on those types of businesses is a big step in that direction and indicates that there's more we could do, a lot more we could do with that under independence, but that's very much on our focus. And the work that I'm doing on how we increase Scottish exports, a large part of that is focused on exactly those businesses, which are Scottish-owned SMEs that do export but could export an awful lot more with the right support, and we're putting a lot of focus on that. I'll pass over. There you go.
Could I just ask you to elaborate a bit on, you mentioned, someone else asked about, what's Brexit, how's Brexit going to affect this, and you also mentioned, an emergency situation. And if the UK's exit from the EU does turn into a moderately shambolic situation, which seems to be at least possible at the moment, and also back on what they were saying about how hard is it to exit from a 300-year-old union, do we have a way of explaining to ordinary voters that there is an achievable and sensible and practical route for Scotland to go from being part of this shambolic UK that's just come out of the EU? And I mean, I'm up for it, but then I'm quite resilient. I've got enough resources to do it. But your ordinary voter who's not so resilient, have we got a route map that we can practically explain to voters that there is an achievable and a foreseeable way that we can quite quickly get back into a good relationship with the EU and Scotland being open again, as it was at the time of the Battle of Stirling Bridge when Wallace won, and they promptly said to Europe, "Hey, Scotland's open again." And how do we manage our 21st century Lubeck letter or whatever it is?
Yeah, the Lubeck letter, I quoted that in a speech I made in Hamburg about 3 or 4 months ago to the Chamber of Commerce there to make that very point. We're working hard at that international linkages. You see the stuff that Alan Smith does, Mike Russell, when it has that, Ben McPherson, and the First Minister are in Europe very often. I've done now 10 trips to Europe in the last 9 months to promote Scottish business and trade, and very importantly to make that point about how and why we are different and why we want those links to be maintained and continued and strengthened with our European. Yeah, so that's happening. In terms of the voter, it comes down to do the people of Scotland think we can make a better job of it, right? And you can look at Brexit and say Brexit's a mess because it's Brexit, or Brexit's a mess because of the people that's running Brexit. Now, I mean, I think Brexit is an extremely stupid idea, and really wish it wasn't happening. But if you were in charge of doing Brexit and that was your job, you could have made a much better job of it than she's doing. Because what you would have done at the start is got everybody in, had a look at it, said, right, it was quite close, but we've got to satisfy the result. And we've got the Irish issue, which frankly they just didn't understand, and many of them still don't understand. And then you would have said, right, if we're going to leave, we'll leave on the best possible terms, which is stay in a single market, stay in a customs union, exit everything else, and then move on. And you would have done that fairly quickly, and it would have happened within the time period, and you would have been, you would have not been in the best situation, because nothing's as good as being in the European Union, but you could have done that and moved on from that fairly quickly. The problem they've got, therefore, isn't that Brexit is causing the problem. It's not an optimal solution by a long way. It's because of the people and the system that's running the process. And I think that's an important point to get across to people, that we can do that better. And that's about building that up. It's what the Scottish Government's done over the last where have we now, 12 years since we've been in power, across a whole range of sectors, be it what we're doing that's different on welfare, what we're doing that's different on NHS, what we're doing we're different on all aspects of the police I've mentioned, and all aspects of how we run the country. And it's connecting with individuals that see that they can influence the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government in a way they could never imagine or dream of influencing what's happening at Westminster. So all of those things add up, and that gives people confidence that we've got the ability to do that ourselves. And I think that's what will make the difference.
My favourite comment is from an American commentator who said, the UK is committing economic suicide. It just can't make up its mind how to do it.
Yeah.
There's one thing, when you were introducing your remarks and you were talking about the areas of our economy that are prospering, I couldn't help but notice there were raised eyebrows when you mentioned space and aerospace. And when I was doing my homework for this evening, I was reading about a debate and a discussion on that very industry in Parliament, and I was astonished that the potential goes up to about 4 billion odds worth of business. Now, how many people in this room knew that?
Oh, there we go. Somebody's been listening to the debate. There we go.
Now, this is my point. That made me think about many of the people in this room are activists. We go out talking about this stuff. And it's very important that we know it. Now, what I did this evening, I looked out those election leaflets by those good people there. This is one going back to the Yes campaign. The only mention of wealth creation or business is the small business bonus. And people notice the word small. This is one about, notice I just took things that fit in my pocket. This is what has the SNP ever done for Edinburgh. No mention about wealth creation, all the wonderful things you talked about, small business bonus. Again, small. And then there's this glorious thing, which some
140 different things,
I remember that. Oh no, there's 100. What is it, 144?
There you go.
Now, if you look at this, most people don't read all this, only people like me do. In the eye-catching bit, the yellow bit, what does it talk about? The small business bonus. Now, what I'm saying to you, we are doing some wonderful things. If you look at our leaflets, some of the literature, we just don't know. And you guys aren't doing a very good job of telling us. You know.
Well, I'm coming here tonight to talk to you good people about it.
When I started my remarks, I was delighted because I remember hearing you 4 or 5 years ago and was enormously impressed and felt empowered when we were out in the streets. And I just think we need to know more about this sort of stuff.
Well, the unionists sneer when anybody
Yes. And so the public are very well aware of the SNP on spending, but not on wealth creation.
Yeah.
And I think my message to you, to go back to Hawthorne, is that you've got to do more about promoting what you've been talking about this evening and giving it as the information in a way that we can handle in the street.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No,
So
I think that's, you're absolutely right. But I would take a step back. The reason we've got me in this job and Kate Forbes in her job, which are two new positions, and Derek Mackay looking over the whole piece, and Jamie Hepburn doing his on the economy and finance, and Jamie Hepburn doing his work on business, is because we've created that team in government of 4 ministers who are focused exclusively on the economy and finance and how we drive that forward and how we communicate those messages. So there's a recognition from the First Minister that that's important. The focus is on it, the resources are on it, and we are working hard to deliver it and get the message out that we're delivering it as well. And I think events like this, and I've got several more lined up in my diary over the coming weeks, is to get that message out and make it clear. But I take your point on the publicity. We need to do more of it there as well.
you see, I've read the Ladybird Book of Marketing, and in the Ladybird Book of Marketing, it says it's just not good enough to do a good job. You have to tell people about it. So that is my message to you.
Thank you. Is that as
Are there any further questions? One more.
Yeah, I am reading quite a lot about MMT just now, and so one of the things that's within that as a paradigm is the concept of a jobs guarantee. So the people that are doing the podcast that I'm listening to just now, they got interested in it because obviously in 2008 we had no money and we also had lots of money at the same time. So how is that? Yes, so we had money creation. The government created money. They just decided to put a lot of it into the banks and they didn't, for example, give it to councils to spend on council spending or to the NHS. But one of the things that they point out in the podcast as well is that if you have people who are idle, you know, people are your resource, they're your big resource, and if they're not working and not doing useful work, then it's something like $1 billion a day lost in the American economy down to people not working. And if you're, you know, creating money and getting people to work for that money, doing useful things, then of course there's a tax return and.
No, it's absolutely. I mean, that is absolutely correct, right? That's absolutely correct. It's how do you expand the economy? How do you invest? It's a Keynesian approach, and absolutely it works. The issue at the moment in Scotland is that we've now got unemployment at a level which is the lowest it's been since 1973 or 4, right? And every month I look at those numbers and they're nudging down more and more. And our unemployment is lower and has been for a few years now than unemployment in the rest of the UK. Now, it's 3.5%. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, I'll come to that. But that's only part of the picture because I know there's issues with 0 hours contracts that we don't control. There's issues with employment law that we don't control, and there's aspects around that if we did control, we would make changes on. Absolutely. But the reality is, that in every single business I talk to, what they talk to me, the number one issue is skills. Right? They can't get enough skilled people. Right? So the issue. The challenge, and given what we just talked about high tech, right, where we're going to life sciences, on space, on quantum, on advanced manufacturing, whatever, and that's where you need to be to compete in the modern world. The challenge is how do you get people that aren't in the labour market into the labour market that haven't worked for a long time, and how do you get everybody moved up that skills ladder so as they're doing more and more and more. And that's where the apprenticeship schemes, the modern apprentice, the graduate apprentice, that's where that's all hugely important. Because the issue isn't that we're sitting with 15 or 20% unemployment and we've got people hanging about the streets that we could give to do work. The issue is the skills challenge and the hard to reach challenge. The people that have either got a disability that's a challenge for them, or they haven't worked for a long time and need to start at the very basics, as in how do you go and hold down a job, or people that are unfortunately in the loop of they've got in and out of prison, drugs, etc. That's the challenge. It's how do you get, and Jamie Hepburn's doing a power of work there on the employability. And there are,
But they've all disintegrated.
No, there's as many people at college as there is now than there was before. The difference is now the courses are very much focused on how do you get the skills to get a job and keep a job. That's where the focus is now.
So many young people deciding to go and take a degree in media studies or photography, or how many media studies or photographers or whatever do we need? We're struggling to get people into useful skills.
Creative industries is one of our biggest and fast growing sectors, and one with huge export potential. When I go to visit businesses, I was one in Glasgow last week, employs 20 people tucked away in the centre of Glasgow in a basement. 90% of what they do is export, and it's all about using virtual reality technology to put in place experiences for museums and other events and whatever, and they sell this technology everywhere. So that's the crossover between digital and creative. The computer games industry is world leading, right? They've developed a huge skill set. And that is creative industries, and that, as you say, well, actually, people messing about with whatever, drawing pictures on computers, but that industry is huge. And well, then the crossover from that, the folks that are in that business are looking at that, and the things that they've learned in that business, they're taking into fintech to drive new fintech businesses that are taking financial services to places that they never thought they'd be able to go, never imagined it, because they've got the technology and the view of their business to be able to make those adaptations. So there's a lot of stuff in there, and to look at it and say, just because it's media or photography, you can't make money at it. Absolutely you can. And the economy is becoming increasingly a service economy. So those skill sets are hugely useful as well. So it comes down to how you get people along that skills ladder, and how do you get them into the labour market in the first place. Not because there aren't jobs, but because there are other challenges there that need to be tackled to get them into a place where they're holding down a job that they haven't done before.
So before I conclude,
sorry, I'll just finish on that. I mean, I go all of my constituency, which, by the way, has the highest unemployment in the country. Everywhere I go, there are employability classes. There's wee rooms like this with 10 computer screens in them, with people coming in and doing job applications and getting support for that, or doing online stuff or whatever. So that there's a lot of activity happening there to work away at the folk that aren't in employment and give them the support they need to get into jobs that they can do.
Okay. Before I conclude, I think Colin, who comes all the way from West Linton,
has
an announcement.
With my other hat on, I'm actually vice convener of Yes Linton, and we've managed to get Leslie Ridder's third series on the nation, Norway, the twin nation. We've got that tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the St Andrews New Church Hall. So if you fancy a wee journey into the countryside, to a beautiful wee village of West Linton, do come along. It's free, by the way, and we've actually got Leslie's going to be there to field questions and give you answers. So that's tomorrow, West Linton, St Andrews New Church Hall at 3 o'clock. Okay.
If you could book on Eventbrite, that would be appreciated. It's free. It's free. We're not charging for entry, but helpful if you could book ahead. So
there's also the village market is actually preceding the showing. So I mean, if you were thinking of making it, if you want to make a day of it, then there's a lot.
So it's the place to be tomorrow afternoon. Just a reminder, I need a couple of bigger and stronger than me people to help me put the chairs away. And Irene will take a collection at the door, as usual. And if you leave your glasses on the table, if you have them, that would be appreciated. Well,
Roy, I'm going to put my other hat on as well as co-convener Yes Edinburgh North League. We have someone to talk about modern monetary theory and the jobs guarantee on Wednesday. So if anyone wants to come to that, that's in Papillon, Commercial Street in Leith.
Yeah. Oh,
that's
wow.
on the Facebook page.
So it is the economy.
Yeah, and I'll just finish up by saying thank you very much for coming along, and Yeah, it is all about the economy. So go and learn what you can, watch stuff on YouTube, and talk to other people about it, because it's a very good place we're in. And you absolutely rightly said we should make the most of it, because that's what's going to help get us over the line in IndieRef too. So thank you.
So can I conclude by thanking you all for coming, because it's you coming that makes these evenings. But Ivan, that was superb. I really enjoyed it, really appreciated it, and it's useful. It will help us.